The untold life lessons from To Kill a Mockingbird that will change how you see the world forever. Imagine stepping into a small town in Alabama during the 1930s, where children's innocence collides with society's deepest prejudices. Harper Lee's To Kill a Mockingbird is not just a story about a lawyer defending an innocent man, it is a timeless mirror held up to humanity, reflecting courage, morality, justice, empathy, and the struggle between innocence and corruption. The brilliance of this book lies not just in its narrative, but in the lessons woven through every page, lessons that continue to shape how we think about integrity, compassion, and the choices we make when faced with moral conflict. When we first meet Scout Finch, her youthful curiosity is our entry point into the world of Mockingbird, Alabama. Through her eyes, we discover the raw honesty of childhood perception, and it reminds us of how children often see truths that adults overlook. This lens of innocence makes us question our own biases, because when you strip away society's conditioning, fairness and empathy come naturally. The book teaches us that prejudice is not innate, it is learned, and if it can be learned, it can be unlearned. This realization is powerful because it urges us to reflect on the prejudices we may unconsciously carry and challenges us to break that cycle. Atticus Finch, Scout's father, becomes the embodiment of moral courage. He teaches us that true bravery is not about wielding physical strength, but about standing firm in your convictions even when the world is against you. His defense of Tom Robinson, an innocent black man falsely accused of a crime, is a masterclass in integrity. Atticus knew he would likely lose the case, but he also knew that failing to defend Tom would mean betraying the very principles he lived by. This lesson reminds us that doing what is right is not always rewarded by immediate success or popularity. Sometimes it leads to isolation, criticism, and even defeat. Yet, it is in those moments of resistance that our character is defined. Another profound lesson is the idea of walking in someone else's shoes. Atticus repeatedly tells Scout that you never truly understand a person until you climb into their skin and walk around in it. This lesson forces us to confront our lack of empathy in everyday life. Think about how often we judge others based on appearance, behavior, or a single decision they've made. The book challenges us to pause, to imagine their struggles, their fears, and their unseen battles. If we could truly embrace this lesson, the world would be a place with less cruelty and far more compassion. The trial of Tom Robinson stands as the central event that reveals the ugly face of systemic racism. Despite overwhelming evidence of his innocence, he is convicted because of the color of his skin. This brutal miscarriage of justice highlights how prejudice can corrupt even the institutions meant to protect fairness. The lesson here is a sobering one: systems are only as just as the people who operate them, and if those people allow bias to govern their decisions, injustice will prevail. The book compels us to confront the uncomfortable truth that silence in the face of injustice is complicity. It pushes us to ask ourselves, when we see unfairness in our communities, do we speak up, or do we turn away because it feels safer? Through the mysterious character of Boo Radley, Harper Lee reminds us of the dangers of rumor, fear, and misunderstanding. The town paints Boo as a recluse to be feared, someone almost monstrous. But as the story unfolds, we realize that Boo is kind, gentle, and ultimately heroic. His quiet act of saving Scout and Jem reveals that the people we misunderstand the most might be the ones carrying the greatest goodness. The lesson here is about the masks we project onto others and the walls we build between us and those we do not understand. How often do we write people off without knowing their true story? How often do we miss opportunities to connect because we let fear dictate perception? Childhood itself becomes a lesson in this novel. Scout and Jem's journey from innocence to maturity mirrors the painful yet necessary transition we all must undergo. They begin believing that people are mostly good and fair, but they learn that society is far more complex, filled with contradictions, hypocrisy, and cruelty. And yet, through that journey, they also learn resilience, compassion, and the power of choice. The novel tells us that growing up means facing harsh truths, but it also means carrying forward the values that can help heal the world rather than harm it. At its heart, To Kill a Mockingbird is a reminder that morality is not inherited, it is chosen. The choices we make, whether to speak out against wrong, whether to extend empathy, whether to stand firm in our principles, define who we are. The lessons of this book are not locked in the 1930s South. They are alive today, in every decision we make, in every injustice we encounter, in every act of kindness we offer. The story challenges us not just to admire Atticus Finch, but to embody his courage in our own lives, to protect the innocent, to question our biases, and to live with integrity even when it is inconvenient. This book endures because it calls us to be better, not in grand heroic gestures, but in everyday acts of humanity. It asks us to see the world through a child's clarity, to resist the corruption of prejudice, and to hold fast to the simple yet radical idea that justice and compassion must guide us. As you reflect on its pages, you realize that To Kill a Mockingbird is more than a novel, it is a compass, pointing us toward a world where understanding and empathy have the power to transform not just individuals, but entire societies.